Hello, this is Marva Solomon again, and we are ready for our second video lecture for this course in children's literature. And the next reading that I'm assigned to you is an article called "What Do Teachers Need to Know About Children's Literature?" And it's a pretty long and in-depth article, and the parts that I want you to focus on are the one that says Book Selection 101 and the underground. Okay, so those are the only two parts I want you to not worry about right now. The one that says teaching for reader response. Okay, we'll either do that next time or I'll save it for later because we are going to talk about teacher response separately anyway. Okay, so today the first thing I wanted to do, because the thing I like about this article is that it talks about joy and how important it is to have joy when you are reading, and that you can't transmit joy to your kids unless you really love the book. So I pretty much recommend that you read books, when you're reading books to kids, that you read books that you really love. Okay, and the article talks about, selecting books and, where to find really good books. And one thing, of course, that we've had in class, we talked about already, are the medal winners. This one is one of my favorite Caldecott books. It's an older one. It is by William Steig, and I've got lots of his books because I love this one so much. I collected a lot of them, and I'm going to read the first page or so. Let's see. I'll show you the picture. There's the picture. It's about a donkey. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father at Acorn Road in Oatesdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. And here's the pictures. There you go. On quite an extraordinary one. It was flaming red, shiny, and perfectly round, like a marble. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, he began to shiver, probably from excitement, and the rain felt cold on his back. "I wish it would stop raining," he said. Look at that. So it was raining here, and now it's not raining. Look at him. He's surprised. Look at the ducks, too. They're like, whoa, what happened? To his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't stop gradually, as rains usually do. It ceased. The drops vanished on the way down. The clouds disappeared. Everything was dry, and the sun was shining as if rain had never existed. Wow. Wonder what happened. Okay. Now, the article, the book is called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. So I'm wondering if something was magic about that very special pebble he found. All right. One of my very favorite books. You can notice here that it was selected as one of the best books of the century by the National Education Association. It is a Caldecott winner, so you know that it's been, and actually if it's Caldecott, that means it's been chosen for its artwork. So that's one of my very favorites. You can see here, I'm going to show you a picture in the middle here. I'm going to tell you right now that rock right there is Sylvester. So something bad happened. He made the wrong wish. Okay. All right, another book that I really like. I told you in class that I like books about dogs. I just love animal books especially. But because, there's no race or anything like that. They're just animals, so they can tell stories and there's no other connotations or social connotations to it. But this one's called A Ball for Daisy, and it's by Chris Rashka. And this is a Newbery, a Caldecott honor book, it looks like, because I think it's silver if it's an, well, no, it's a gold. So this is a gold. This one won the Caldecott. I don't know when. You can look up and see when it was a winner. It says in the back, a Caldecott medal winner, a New York Times Best Illustrated Children's Book of the Year. It's got lots of recommendations for this book. I've read other books by him. He uses very few words, which is kind of cool. His other one is called Yo Yes, that I like to use when I talk about communication in the social cultural class. So anyway, this is called A Ball for Daisy, and there's Daisy. Looks a little bit like my dog, my first doggie. And you can see here, he has his ball there. Okay. All right. And he loves his ball. Well, you know, probably in a story, even though there's no words in this book, something bad's probably going to happen, or at least, you know, something unusual. And what could possibly happen to a dog and a ball? So that's a reason to read that book and find out. All right, so those are two of my favorite picture books, and I showed you last time, so in that basket that I bring, some of my favorite chapter books, who are also Newbery books, okay? And when you're selecting books, you know, the article talks about how important it is to, where do you go to find good books, you know, because it's hard to know, well, what's a good book for me to read to my kids? And so the article recommends you start with those lists. You start with the Caldecott, which is the best picture book of the year, so there's one selected for each year. The Newbery book, which is the best chapter book for children, that's selected each year. Again, a good list. There's been it's been going on for quite a long time, so you've got quite a few years to pick from. You probably want to stay, 1970s on, 1960s on, because things do kind of get dated, especially if you want to be, sensitive to diversity and things like that. It also talks about the two of the books that we talked about around the Bluebonnet books, and because it doesn't say that specifically in the article, but it talks about books that are, each state has their students' chosen books that the children read and choose, and in Texas they're called the Bluebonnet books. So that's one that you're reading. Also the one for African American authors and illustrators, and that's the Coretta Scott King Award. And I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but it's the Pura Belpre Award, which is for Latino author and illustrators. So that way you can make sure that you get in your diversity, because that's real important. And then they also mentioned that there was an award for nonfiction that we aren't talking about in class, but that's something also that, sometimes we forget, to include nonfiction as part of really good literature for kids. All right. The article talks about how teachers sometimes, we ask teachers, how do you decide what's a good book? And there's also, the article also mentioned that controversy that sometimes kids don't like Newbery books, and then actually, studies show that if you really ask kids, that's not true. They do like them, because a lot of times, you think of these award-winning books are so artsy or something. Sometimes that happens with movies, but over time, if you look and see, do kids really like these books? Those are books that kids like. But when teachers sometimes evaluate books, they don't have the best criteria. They'll say, well, I want something that doesn't have any bad words in it and won't be controversial so my parents won't call, or, doesn't have any swear words, and, or it'll fit into my curriculum. And those probably aren't the best reasons to pick books. And in the article, it has a list of 3 that I want you to look over, and see, because that's something, that you should know. What should you, look at for deciding if a book is worth reading to your kids and sharing with your kids, okay? And then here is what I kind of started with at the beginning when I talked about joy, that if it's not a book that you really love, then it's probably not something that you should share with kids, okay? And it's okay to have the book in the room, and my example is coming up in a second, because these are books that, well, actually, it's Junie B. Jones, and I don't have a copy of that one, but anyway, we'll get to it, Junie B. Jones, because I cannot stand the book. But it's okay for them to read it and be excited about it. That's perfectly fine, and I don't talk about their books in front of them, but that's something to think about. If you're going to share a book with kids, make sure it's something you really like, that brings you joy. All right. In the article, it talks about 2 things, and I want you to remember the aesthetic stance and the efferent stance, and kind of what the differences are. Because when we approach a book, we have reasons for reading them, and those are 2 different stances that, as you're reading a book, that you come to approach a book. And it's real important that when you're reading for children, that you're reading for that aesthetic reason. Okay. All right. One thing the article talked about, it was a big section on the underground. And of course, you can kind of get an idea of what you think that means. Basically, that's books that kids love. that might not have, if you look at some high-minded criteria for what you want from children's books, these books just really don't have it. And it starts with the older books, like somebody in our class is already reading Nancy Drew, and somebody, we mentioned how much, I love Nancy Drew as a little kid, the Hardy Boys, the Boxcar Children, and mentioned things that might even be a little older, past before my time. But it talked about how, even though these are books that might not get the award lists, they still are important to kids, and it's important to, that's what kind of draws them into reading. The article mentioned too, I like that word. They said sometimes, it's so important to collect the books. It's like, collecting figurines. They've got their collection of the Babysitters Club or their collection of Pokemon Heroes Club or whatever. And so, it's not even about the reading. It's about the owning of these books, And I already mentioned Junie B. Jones is that I buy books for, and she loves Junie B. Jones, and I happily buy them for her. And I'm glad she loves them. I am not ever reading that book. I mean, just no. The language thing just bothers me, but it's not about me, is it, all the time? All right. Some more series books. It talked about, Goosebumps. Remember that? That's probably from when y'all were kids. But also my kids really enjoyed the Magic Treehouse books. That's one, it talked about in the article that the characters don't change. They don't have to. They're already perfect, The people are heroic just because they're heroic people. Another series that I have not read. I haven't read too many of these either. I just can't handle it. The Time Warp Trio is one students enjoyed. So that's another series book. And there's another book that come. And then here's a relatively new one. These are actually graphic novels, which are pretty popular right now. It's the Lunch Lady series. Okay. And so there's a whole bunch of those there. The things that are happening. It says the Bake Sale Bandit and the Lunch Lady and the Summer Camp Shakedown. There's the Lunch Lady right there. And this one is the Lunch Lady and the Author Visit Vendetta. Okay. And kids absolutely love these books. And maybe they're not the finest literature or the most, highbrow lessons can be learned from them, but kids are reading them, so it's important that they have their space to read them.